Hello, class. Very sorry about this week. So, what ended up happening was I had a work conflict on Thursday. I thought we were going to just be moving our day till Tuesday. However, I found out that it's a respite day. And instead of trying to makeshift maneuver a bunch of different things, I thought the best way to go about this was to put together a little video. It's going to be very short and give everyone the tools that they need to start moving forward, a couple directions and things that they actually need to have done, and then finally really just try to catapult us to the second half of the class. So what I'm going to be doing right now is I want to talk a little bit about PR3. We talked about PR3 in the last two classes. I think that's very, very important. This is something that in our class conversations, I think that several students are not exactly where they need to be, or they're a little unsure about things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about PR3. Then I am going to tell you what your little assignment is to do. And then finally, I want for you all to go out and really position yourself. Take this next week of us not having class to put yourself in the best position possible to do well on this next assignment as well as the rest of the class. So PR3 is very basic. What the idea is, PR1, you were engaging with an entity, an organization, business, whatever. Then number two, you actually had to have a conversation with somebody. Now, people who chose the modified assignment, they had to create the questions and then mock that up, but still that was done. Now for number three, it's different. What you need to do is you need to say, I had this client meeting. Now, what direction am I pushing them in? Keep in mind, every single one of you will be doing crisis management, but you need to come up with three more things, and that's what PR3 is. You are deciding the three areas, the three emphasis areas that you want to move in within PR to help them move forward. So, understand, I've said this in class a bunch of times, sorry to reiterate, but the fields of communications and public relations and advertising and graphic design and web development and IMC, all of these things, they bleed into one another. And sometimes from an academic sense, we love those delineations. We love compartmentalizing and saying, this is marketing, this is advertising, this is communications, this is external communications versus internal communications. But I'm telling you from experience that very few people are going to care about what the distinction between these things are. Big entities, if you work for a major big corporation or you work for a PR firm, sometimes there are things that you do versus things that you do not do. However, most people who work in these types of fields, it's a little bit of different things. Yes, you can work in advertising and only do advertising. Yes, you can work in a job in communications and only do communications. But more often than not, you're doing things in communications that are a little bit like PR or a little bit like marketing or all of these fields really, it's like a spider web that they kind of overlay on top of each other. So I don't want us to think about this as, I would absolutely love to do this for this client and they would totally appreciate something like this, but it's not 100% PR. It can be. And what I want to do today is I want to talk about a couple of different things, and I want to show you how the same thing could be considered in different fields. So first comes up is social. We've talked about social a lot in this class, and this is something, whether or not you want it to be, that if you are a new grad and you are going into one of these fields, it is going to be assumed that you know more about social than everybody else. So whether or not that's true, it is going to be a generational thing. And there are a lot of people who want to expand their brands on social, and social is changing so rapidly. If you do social media ads, okay, it's kind of advertising, but who creates it? Maybe the marketer, but maybe it's actually the graphic designer. where does that delineation stop? Okay, well, let's not say ads. Let's just say regular posting. Well, that's PR, right? Maybe, but what if you just boost your post? Does that go into advertising or marketing? I don't know. And in general, the PR world has tried to claim their ground on social media. So using social for one of your 3 emphasis areas is definitely a possibility. What you can do is you can create a social media plan, a content calendar, the standards that you want them to follow. Post this many times a week. These are the platforms that you should use, different things like that. I think that a lot of people are looking for guidance. I've actually done a number of seminars for small businesses that are not sure what to do with social. And they're looking for advice. They're looking for someone to say, post 3 times a week. Because they don't know if they should post 1 time a week or 10 times a week or not post. Does it really matter? They want to be told what to do. So giving parameters and giving best practices, that can be one of your emphasis areas. Another one is events. And I actually want to break this down into 2 different types of events. One is the type of event where you are engaging with your general public, inviting people in. You have a new office and you're saying, come on in, community members. Sure, that can be PR. If you want to have an award and try to get press on that, one of the best things that you can do is try to have an event that gets you free publicity. That's a very PR move to do. So if you are in business for 10 years, let's say for example 10 years, and you want to plant trees in your community, that's an event. You can invite people there. You can, the company can buy the trees and you plant trees saying, hey, we've been here for 10 years. We're going to keep being here for 10 years. And you create that bond with the community. It's a positive thing, but if you call newspapers and you look at different style, there are a lot of places that would really run with something like that. So that's a type of event. But also, I don't want us to forget positioning your business as the expert, whatever that is. So maybe you do training classes or training tutorials or things like that. This really does get into more of the social stuff, but I've seen that a lot of people who work in the trades, a person that comes in and just fixes anything in your house, they might have a little page where every day they show you how to do something, and they're providing value and they're showing how good they are at what they do. You can also have events like that, not just post online, but you can have events teaching people something. So even though at my company I provide communications and marketing services, we also host opportunities for people to learn how to do it themselves, because I get to position myself as the expert. And yeah, I might give away some of the tips and tricks, but ultimately I'm empowering them and there's more credibility coming to me. This is typically not something you do with a fee to it. It typically jumps into other categories when you do that. It becomes a service itself. But if you host free seminars for these things, I think that can be also a way to give back. And anytime you're doing things for free, no upfront costs from anybody, you can also have people run those, post those on different places, event calendars, things like that. That really delves right into press releases. Press releases are still important. For a while there, people were thinking that press releases weren't as important, but they are, because it's a third party saying that this is important information. If you have a press release, and something like the Pittsburgh Business Times is a wonderful place to have things published, and especially in the Pittsburgh area, people really see that as a credible source. If the credible source is saying that your story is important, it's important. If I post a story on my company's Facebook page, I think it's important. So I think my story is important. There's no credibility there. There's credibility, but it's not the same type of credibility. On the other hand, with a press release, the outside entity is saying, we're going to verify this. So, maybe it's creating press releases, but also it might just be, there are places that say, I don't even know how to get a press release. Well, what is a press release? How do I write one? Where do I send it to? What types of places do I send it to? Maybe you're creating a plan of all the places that they can send it. Internal communications is another one. Internal communications is important, especially as your company gets bigger and bigger. One of the ways that your public is going to best engage with your company is by what it hears. If your company has 3 or 5 people, okay, like there's it can only reach so far. But when your company has 20 people and 50 people and 100 people and 300 people and 10, like as it just goes up and up and up, you run more and more of a risk. And that's why having an internal PR person to understand what their employees are like, making sure that you do things for employee relations, make sure that you're positioning your company the way that you want to be positioned externally. There are a lot of companies that think that it's two different things, that this is the way we present ourselves to the public, this is the way we present ourselves to our employees. But the problem is, as you grow, those employees leave and those employees talk to other people. And you wouldn't believe what we hear behind closed doors. Oh, you wouldn't believe that. You wouldn't believe it. You want to have that consistent messaging and consistent brand. And also, one of the best ways you can promote your brand is to promote it to your employees, because your employees are talking about your brand probably more than your clients are. So employee communications and the internal PR is incredibly important. Also, there is content generation. So this is another one of those areas where it's like, okay, well, who is to be doing this? Well, the marketer or the web developer is the one creating the ad or the text online, maybe. But also, that needs to be reviewed by your PR team, your PR person, to make sure that you're communicating things the way that you want them to be communicated. It's very different when we use slightly different words. And sometimes the experts in the field don't necessarily know what the right words are for the potential clients or the potential communities. So knowing that content generation is a part of that is important. And then finally, brand development. This is something we did not talk about in class, but I do think that it is important. How you position yourself as a brand will impact the way in which your public perceives you. If you allow your sales team to create everything, your sales team is focused on something very different than your PR team should be focused on. Your sales team is looking to hit numbers, to drive sales and to drive sales now. Oftentimes sales teams are compensated or at least evaluated based on what they're doing right this second. That's not how PR teams are evaluated. PR people, PR teams are typically the long game. You step back and say, we want to develop these relationships for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, for the next 100 years. How do we do that? That's a different thing. And trying to meld those two together is sometimes difficult. So brand development, I think that it's important to recognize that everything that comes out from your company, whether it's your ads or your social or press releases or your website, anything that is information from your company to your public, it still needs to walk and talk and look like you want it to. And sometimes that brand development does matter. So no, that's not you creating logos. No, that's not probably you redesigning websites. We're not talking about that. But what are the ideals you're trying to push forward? What are the core concepts and themes that you really want to get out to your brands? So those are some of the different things we talked about more in class. And I think that this is a really good opportunity to figure out what you want to do. Because quite honestly, there are so many different ways that you can impact and help brands. Like I've told you in the past, when I put some of these together, it's not 3 or 4, it's usually a number of different areas. I typically call mine IMC plans for integrated marketing communications, but I typically use IMC because I think that it's as close to all encompassing as possible, and it does include things that are under the umbrella of PR. So figuring out what you want to do is important. What your little assignment is here is going to be emailing me directly. You have to email me directly before Friday, and I am not writing that I'm not writing that on like our shell online. I am doing that so that I see that you watch the video. Oh, big surprise. So if you're friends with anybody else in class, give somebody a heads up. Text somebody and be like, yo, listen, you gotta watch the whole video because at the end of it, he gives you a little assignment. So I really hope that you're reviewing this video, you're watching this video, you're internalizing it, understanding what we need to do. And I need you to send me an email and telling me just a bullet point and saying, I watched the video and here are the 3 things that I'm focusing on. 1, 2, 3. If you end up changing one of those 3 things, that's fine, no big deal. Before your assignment's handed in, if you end up changing one of them, absolutely fine. However, this is a way for you to say, like, these are the general things that I'm going to do. And if you don't know what 3 things you want to do and you just want to ask a question, that's also okay too. Hey, I watched the video. I know that I want to talk about press releases and social. I have no idea what I want to do for number 3. And then you want to have a follow-up question with me, totally cool. But I really want for people to understand that this is a very creative part of the process. You could take 3 or 5 or 10 PR people in the field and go to the same client, and they might all advise the client to do something totally different. And that's what's unique about PR, that there's not a singular way to succeed, but also it doesn't mean you're not going to do well just because you used an alternate way. So I might review your stuff and say, wow, like I definitely would have gone with events there. But it doesn't mean you have to go with events. It just means that's one way one person would go. So where do you want to go? What do you want to get out of this? How do you want to develop your skills? Because that's really, really what this whole assignment and this course is trying to be about. I'm trying to get you to review things right now, to be able to put together packages so that you have more tools in your tool belt by the time you get a job. So that by the time that you get a full-time job, you can hit the ground running. And sometimes I think that when we stick to only theory, when we stick to the hypotheticals, it just doesn't give you some of that real-world application that you really do need. And even if you do this assignment, crisis management one is one, but then you have the other 3. If you have these 4 parts and 3 of them end up being really good and one of them really isn't as strong as you want, that's okay. I want you to learn. I want you to, learn from this, because not everything is going to be a home run, but it's still allowing you to learn and excel and try to move things in a different order. So your steps moving forward, send me an email, tell me the 3 areas you're going over. Sorry about not meeting this upcoming week, but I am always available for emails, and I'll see you guys next time.